You know, for more than 60 years, a really violent insurgency has been a persistent problem in central India. But now, well, the government has drawn a line in the sand. They've set a hard deadline to completely wipe out Naxalism. The big question is, can they actually do it? Or is this just wishful thinking? Let's dive in and unpack the strategy.
And really, this is the question at the heart of it all. We're not just talking about managing the problem or slowing it down. Nope. The goal is the complete elimination of a conflict that's been going on for 60 years, and they want it done in just a couple of years. That is a seriously bold claim. So let's take a look at the plan and see if it actually holds water.
Okay, so before we can even get into the strategy to dismantle this thing, we've got to understand what we're actually up against. So let's do a quick primer. What exactly is Naxalism and what are its goals?
So this all kicked off back in 1967 in a village called Naxalbari. It started as a peasant uprising. But here's the thing you have to understand. This isn't about asking for reforms. This is a full-blown Maoist-inspired armed movement. And their goal is crystal clear: to overthrow the Indian state, fighting a long, drawn-out war to do it.
All right, so fast forward from that history lesson to right now. The government has put a date on the calendar, March 31st, 2026. And believe me, this isn't just some political promise. It's a ticking clock, and it's pushing every single part of their strategy forward.
So how on earth do you even start to tackle a problem that's this old, this deep-rooted? Well, the government's answer is a three-front war. They're fighting with guns, they're fighting with development projects, and they're fighting by choking off the money.
So, here are the three pillars of their plan. First up, you've got the security front. That's about taking on the armed fighters head-on. Then there's the development front, which is all about tackling the root causes of the conflict and, winning over the local population. And finally, the financial front. Basically, starving the movement of cash. Let's kick things off with security.
The whole security strategy is built around this doctrine called Samadhan. It's actually an acronym for things like smart leadership, aggressive strategy, motivation, and actionable intelligence. But here's the main takeaway. This isn't just about sending in troops with brute force. It's way smarter than that. We're talking about using technology, like drones, high-tech mapping, to be super precise and a lot more effective. And you can actually see this strategy in action on the ground. They've built nearly 600 new fortified police stations in areas that used to be completely remote. And this is huge. It does two things. One, it gives security forces a permanent base of operations. And two, for the first time in a long, long time, it shows the people in these communities that the state is actually there. Okay, on to that second front, development. This is absolutely key, because it's about taking away the Naxal's #1 recruiting tool, which is just plain neglect. The government is focusing on three big things: building roads to connect isolated villages, bringing in digital connectivity to link them to the modern world, and providing financial access with things like banks and ATMs. It's all about giving people real opportunities. At the end of the day, it's about making the government a much better option than joining the insurgents.
And that brings us to the third front, cutting off the cash. Look, no insurgency can survive without money. It's that simple. So a special unit within the National Investigation Agency, that's India's top counterterrorism agency, was set up specifically to hunt down and seize Naxal funding. And they've been pretty successful. So far, they've grabbed assets worth over 40 crore rupees. That's about $5 million US. That's a huge blow to their ability to operate.
So that's the three-pronged strategy. But of course, the big question is any of this actually working? Well, if you look at the data, it seems like a pretty massive shift is happening. Just take a look at this. A decade ago, this insurgency was active in 126 districts across the country. Today, that number has plummeted to just 11. That is a staggering drop, more than 90%. I mean, the entire map of this conflict has been redrawn.
And it's not just about shrinking territory. The human cost, which is the most important thing, has also dropped dramatically. If you compare it to the peak of the violence back in 2010, there's been an 85% fall in related deaths. That's incredible. It means the actual intensity of the conflict is way, way down. A lot of this progress is being driven by some really aggressive security operations. Just in 2025, more than 330 Naxal cadres were neutralized. And what's really crucial here is that this number includes senior leaders. It's like cutting the head off the snake. It throws their entire command structure into chaos. And this isn't just numbers on a chart. We have real-world examples. Take the Chakabanda forest in Bihar. For years, this was a massive Naxal stronghold, a total no-go zone. Now, it's been cleared.
That's a landmark victory, and it proves that even the most difficult, most fortified areas can be taken back. But, despite all these incredible gains, it would be a huge mistake to pop the champagne and declare victory just yet. There are still some major challenges standing in the way of that 2026 goal.
The fight from here on out gets really tough, and it's for three main reasons. First, you've got the terrain. The last of the fighters are holed up in places like the Abu Janmad forest. We're talking dense, impenetrable jungle. Second, their influence isn't just in the villages. They have networks of supporters in cities, spreading propaganda and recruiting. And third, and this might be the most important piece, they can still tap into real, legitimate anger among local people over things like land rights to keep their movement alive.
So you end up with this really stark contrast. On one hand, you've got a huge success story like the Chakarbanda Forest, which is now totally clear of insurgents. But on the other hand, you have the final frontier, places like Abu Jmad and Chhattisgarh. This is their last major stronghold. This is where the whole thing will be won or lost.
Okay, so that deadline is getting closer and closer. What does the final push actually look like? How do you clear these last really difficult hurdles?
Well, the strategy is definitely shifting for this final phase. First, it's all about empowering the local communities themselves, working through their traditional village councils, the Gram Sabhas. Second, it's about bringing in highly specialized elite forces. Think of units like the Greyhounds, a legendary force from Andhra Pradesh known for surgical strikes. And third, it's about winning the war of hearts and minds, using media and outreach to build trust and fight back against Naxal propaganda.
And that really brings us to the final thought here. The numbers, the data, they all show a conflict that is clearly on its last legs. The strategy of combining security, development, and financial pressure has had a massive, undeniable impact. But as this fight gets pushed into its final, most difficult corners, the battle might not be won with guns alone. It might come down to finally resolving those deep-seated local grievances and truly earning the trust of the very communities the Naxals claim to fight for. And that right there could be the final crucial piece of the puzzle to hitting that 2026 deadline.